You can capitalize on that. You can totally use our emotions against us. We give you permission. Hey everyone, thanks for coming by. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap each collectible piece that I saw at the Queen Studios InArt event and my thoughts on it. I'm going to give you a little perspective on where I'm coming from and where my opinion kind of forms from, and a little bit of my history with collecting and art. Just a quick thank you to Jason and John for inviting me to that event. Jason is the CEO of Queen Studios, and John is the, we all know him as sort of the marketing guy, but really he's the licensing guy who's ended up being the marketing guy to everywhere outside of Asia because he's the fluent English speaker. John, thanks for putting up with all of us and the questions and criticisms that we've had. Honestly, we know your job is probably really hard, and everyone's just trying to do the best job they can while trying to keep everything organized. We understand things are hard, and this event was I'm sure somewhat last minute, and you try to get it together as best as you could, and I think you did a great job, and I really, really appreciate you for welcoming me and my wife to this this really, really fun and unforgettable event. When I start talking about all these collectibles, I want you guys to understand where I'm coming from with my opinions and how I see things and how I kind of frame what I'm looking at in my mind. When I was really, really young and saw Star Wars for the first time when I was 7 years old, I was blown away, and my mother told me that one of my family members actually worked for Lucasfilm and worked on the original trilogy, which blew my mind. Star Wars at that time was the greatest thing I'd ever seen, and to have a family member who had worked on that was extremely inspiring as a child. Most of my creative journey and a lot of the choices I've taken as far as collecting and films and video games and things I've been into really kind of stem from that moment and go forward. I got really obsessed with film special effects and how films are made. Not so much the script writing and the acting process, but really the physical world of putting a film together. Sets and design and costumes and characters and special effects makeup, and later on animatronics and CG and computer graphics, all of it. I've been obsessed with that, especially miniature models, and that's kind of my specialty. Those who follow my channel know that I really focus on miniatures and dioramas and art pieces for things like these figures that I have behind me. And so throughout my life on this journey where I've learned little things along the way, mechanical drafting, architectural drafting, photography, computer-aided drafting, 3D modeling, CGI, a little bit of stop motion, a little bit of keyframe animation, building model kits, kit bashing, making wearable art, all those different things. I've got all kinds of little bits of knowledge about how things are made, as well as a strong appreciation for fine art and seeing sincerity in art and sincerity in the workers, which I really, really do felt like I saw here at this Queen Studios event, and I very, very, very much appreciated that was apparent in all the pieces that I saw. I've owned about 1,500 to 2,000 action figures throughout my entire life of collecting. I've owned about 45 Hot Toys. I've owned a couple of third-party figures. I've had tons of Pokemon cards, tons of Marvel trading cards. Currently, I own about 3,200 comics, by the way, if you're interested. Those are for sale. I'm clearing out a lot of stuff because I am trying to put the majority of my resources into focusing on my art and the things that I do on this channel. In addition, I've owned about 25 to 30 statues. I wasn't super huge into statues. I've owned stuff from Sideshow, from XM. One of my favorite statues that I miss dearly was given to me as a gift by my father. That's the Bowen Designs Dr. Doom statue. Oh, I miss that statue. I'd love to have that back, but that's okay. That is the TLDR version of sort of my life's journey and where my mind is at when it comes to collectibles, art, film, special effects, and materials. These are some of the things that I have built recently, like this, and this, if you're wondering what my qualifications might be. So that's the type of stuff that I do. On to the event. First, I'm going to talk about the InArt line of action figures, and then I'm going to move on to the statues and busts. So if you're not a figure guy, go ahead and click the time code below to jump ahead to the busts and statues. And at the end of this video, I'll go over my thoughts on the event, some of the wonderful folks that I met. Here we go. This rooted hair 1/6 scale Joker. I really personally have no critiques of this piece. When I look at this piece, I don't see any room for improvement. The only things that I could see that could make this figure better are things that are not really possible right now. Like if you could make the purple gloves out of actual leather, but I know at that scale to get those fine lines of sewing and the thinness of leather you would have to make it for it to be able to slip over a miniature hand. It's basically impossible. You have to do it with glue, and at that scale you couldn't even get the leather to behave properly. So again, something that maybe could improve the figure, but is kind of technically impossible from a material standpoint to make look as accurate as you've made, I'm assuming, these vinyl vinyl hands. They look incredible. They look like real leather, which is exactly what they're supposed to look like. The rooted hair looks beautiful. As I understand, you guys are using sheep's wool. Viper and the team out there, all of you guys, this is just absolutely phenomenal. Seeing this in person, I felt extremely privileged. I will say on the after panel, John from Queen Studios used, and I quote, verbatim, when one of the audience members asked about the Joker, I believe it was one of the statue collectors who was there, asked John about if those were the production pieces, and John's exact words verbatim were, those Jokers were pulled off the assembly line. So this is your final product. I know that's been said multiple times already, but it's true. This is the final product, and in my opinion, this is just as good as the prototype, maybe even better because they've had a chance to kind of refine it. What I can say is 1 out of 10 to 10 out of 10 is the scale we're using. I'm not exaggerating. I would give this Joker an 11 out of 10 just because it's definitely a 10 out of 10, but I feel like emotionally speaking, it's better than that. I'm giving this an 11 out of 10. It's beautiful. It looks like the quarter scale and 1/3 scale statues I've seen that are absolutely fantastic, literally shrunk down. I just don't, you know, aside from putting an animatronic body inside of this that's linked to an AI inside your brain so that you can move it around, I just don't see any way to improve this. I mean, maybe you could have had optional accessories, an optional facial expression. I'm not saying those things take away from this in any context. They're simply not necessary. This is, hands down, the best, if not one of the top 2 or 3 best action figures ever made. And in my mind, there's simply no disputing that. Let's talk about the sculpted hair. So I saw this in person. This was the photo that I took that I thought captured it well with the rest of the piece. I think this sculpted hair is beautiful. I know I've heard people have complaints about it. I totally respect what you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from. I was noticing that this reminded me a lot stylistically of the Sideshow premium format Rogue statue with the classic 90s cartoon Jim Lee hair. The way that it's sculpted and the way the lines flow together is very much like that. And I say that as a compliment. That Rogue statue is one of my favorite statues I've ever owned. I did very much like the hair on that, and this is essentially a scaled down version of that with more detail than that Rogue sculpt. So having more detail in a scale that's about 30% smaller than the Rogue is pretty impressive to me. Now I do know tonally and color-wise there's going to be some differences between that because of the way that light is going to play through actual sheep's wool hairs. That's real hair. So the way that light is going to bounce through each individual strand and refract and sort of prismatically disperse out going to be totally different. So you can't emulate it perfectly. You can try to do it with paint, but too much paint might not look very good. So I think what they did here is great. All of you who ordered a sculpted hair Joker, you're going to love it. I didn't take too many shots of the jail cell Joker. You know, it's essentially the same figure without the coat on, showing more off with the beautiful diorama. And me, as the diorama guy, this diorama is phenomenal. And as far as I understand, basically that entire apparatus is metal. Justin's collection came out on the show floor. He was kind of walking some of us around and showing us things and picking them up. And he tapped on the metal bars and showed us that they were actually metal. They're absolutely beautiful. Everything is scale accurate. It looks incredible. And the fact that it's actually made of the real material is a big plus for me. I've always felt when I can make a diorama or a miniature or a cosplay type thing, instead of emulating the material, if I have a chance to really use the material and make it look like the material in that scale, I would prefer to do that just because it makes the whole thing more real to me. Even though it's not real as pretend, it just feels real. I really appreciate that this jail is not painted plastic and it's actually metal. That is awesome. Let's talk about that beautiful peg. Wonderful idea. I have broken many pegs to the point where I kind of don't like pulling off hands anymore. Great. That's the kind of innovation people in the 1/6 collecting community have been begging for and asking for. And you gave us 2 options. You gave us the whole forearm section with a magnetic removable peg piece, and then you gave us the wrists with the hands with the gloves that are removable. I really appreciate that option. We would have appreciated knowing that sooner, just for future reference, just to kind of put people's minds at ease. You probably would have got more pre-orders sooner. That's the type of thing that people really appreciate knowing in the 1/6 world, because even though you're going to pose it and you're going to leave it in a pose, just so you understand here, at least in the West with collectors who buy the 1/6 scale stuff and the figures, they're doing that because typically, in my opinion, they've graduated from things like this, things that are 1/12 scale or things that are 1/10 scale that they played with when they were really, really young. And the selling points on those figures were always, growing up here in the West, was the movement and the accessories, because that made it more like the show or the game or whatever you had the figure from, and it made the playability great. Now, obviously, these are for adult collectors, and we're adults, and we're not going to necessarily literally be playing with these, but anything you can give us that gives us that nostalgic feeling and gives us that emotional rush of, ooh, look at all the accessories, look at how much I can do with this, look at all the playability options. Even though we're not going to be playing with it, it hits all those nostalgia buttons. You see what I'm saying here, guys? You can capitalize on that. You can totally use our emotions against us. We give you permission. Give us articulation. Give us accessories. We love it. We'll pay you for it if you do it, and we appreciate it. We know you're trying to create beautiful art, but if you can merge that with the sort of toyetic nostalgia of our past and make it into a beautiful piece of art, you will have our wallets and our blessing. Let's talk about Gandalf. So this figure I really thought was quite beautiful, especially the head sculpt and the beard, as most people agree. Some of the things that surprised me after I first saw this, as a diorama guy and a base guy, I thought the base was kind of a plain choice. It's just basically a rectangular rock, and I was kind of like, that could be a lot better. There's a lot of opportunity there to make it look more like the Mines of Moria. Someone like me, speaking just from experience recently, I could sculpt something like that by hand and mold and cast it and have a cast version of that with the same amount of detail in just a couple of hours. That's again where my perspective I'm coming from. I do feel like you could have given the collectors who wanted this a little bit more with that, and it wouldn't have been that much of an effort. But hey, if you guys need someone to help you with base design or making bases, I'm your guy. I'm available for hire if you guys need me. The one thing I will say about the base, though, is the paint was phenomenal. I saw at least 4 or 5 different tones in there that simulate real shale-style rock that you would see in the type of rock that was being emulated and presented in the Mines of Moria. So zooming in on that real close, the rock looked beautiful. Just would have liked maybe some more to the sculpt. That's all. Just me as a diorama guy. About the hat, I did notice, I feel like there was a little bit of improvement that could have been done on the hat. Some of the seams and edges I could tell were abutted and glued. I do understand, though, that is indicative of the material you're having to make the hat out of, which is felt. Felt is very dense, and I understand it's going to be finicky. I realize you probably had to steam it a lot and milk it around those corners. I noticed looking close up at the hat, your brim was, I don't know if that's made of a strong type of paper or like a buckram material, and then you wrapped the felt, you glued the felt down and then steamed it around the edge and glued that down, and then you put an overlapping sort of washer-shaped piece up underneath. That's why we got that seam around the bottom. That's what that looks like. I get why you did that. I think that was really smart. That it looks best when it's on and his head is down. Unfortunately, we got this pose where it's up. So it kind of, for me, I looked right at it and saw that. Other people might not notice or care, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I just happen to notice because I think about how things are made all the time now. I would like to know if Gandalf's hat can come down a lot farther on his brim. I believe in the films he wears it a lot farther down on his brow, or at least it gives the resemblance that it is. This felt pretty high on the head here. But looking at the hat from the top and from the side, beautiful, gorgeous. I do feel like I personally would give this Gandalf probably a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10. I do think there is room for improvement, but that's not to say this isn't the best Gandalf action figure that anyone has ever seen in any form. Maybe even the best Gandalf product that anyone has ever seen. So again, that's nothing to scoff at. Everybody who bought this, I'm sure, will be happy with it. I think 99.9% of people who bought this will be very happy with it. Pennywise, the evil alien from outer space that eats children. Lovely. I am not a horror guy. I don't collect horror. Although when I was younger, I was very fascinated with special effects makeup. I looked into a lot of that, but I don't really watch any type of horror, especially fantastical horror. I guess arguably I have watched things that could be considered sci-fi horror, but they're really more sci-fi with some scary stuff in them. It is not really my jam, but from a purely artistic and creative standpoint, and from a figure and from looking at a collectible standpoint, this is one of the best things I have ever seen. Quality-wise, it is flawless. Looking at this, it's absolutely stunning. The hair is beautiful. The detail on the forehead is incredible. It's very creepy. It looks like it's looking at you. It looks like it's looking at me right now. It is amazing. And by the way, in person, I have to say, the clothing and the fine wrinkles that you got into it. I mean, you got scaled wrinkles into the puffy sleeves. Oh my goodness. I just wanted to kind of touch it, you know, he looked like this little horrifically frightening clown ballerina. I say what I just said because I felt like I could feel the fineness of it, which is something that's difficult to do in a small scale, but I feel like you guys nailed it. I could feel the fineness of the craftsmanship in that fabric. Very, very much appreciated it. The colors and the tonal ranges were all on point. Man, that second face looked like it went out for a night out of the town with Mr. X in Vegas, and that's how he came home to his wife. But I have to say, that's a compliment, because that thing is scary and that thing is wild. So if you guys order this, you're going to be thrilled. It's unbelievable. Now we have a couple of prototypes to talk about that were just prototypes. This is the Bruce Wayne from the Batman. So I have to say, I do enjoy the beauty of that base, that sort of stone marble base. That looks clean, and that is really, really nice. Let's talk about the face, though. I look at this face sculpt, and I think I do think when I look at each individual piece of it, when I look at the eyes, the eyebrows, the forehead, the shape of the head, the jawline, the mouth, the nose, I feel like when I look at each piece seems correct, but somehow all put together, it seems like there's something off. A lot of collectors have been saying it's in the shape of the head and the eyes. I do tend to agree. I think something about the width and proportion of the head in relation to the individual features is off, and something in the eyes does not seem dark and aged enough. It's got a little bit of a maybe too bright feeling, not necessarily looking, but feeling. I don't know if that might be the material that's betraying you, if this is made out of silicone or if this is a cast plastic, whatever material you're specifically using. That material might actually be the issue. It might not be your sculpt or your artistry, but it does need some work, and I think everybody else agrees. I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product of this. The sculpted hair, it does look too dense. I would try to add more fine lines if possible. I know depending on the material you're casting it in, whether it's PVC or ABS or some type of vinyl, you have some limitations depending on the viscosity and the curing temperatures and times of the materials. But I would say please look for something that's going to be able to give you finer lines, because everyone agrees that sculpted hair looks a little bit too dense. Each individual fold, kind of like this, if I just drop my hair down like that, is like too big of a piece. There's not a fineness to it. So maybe just a little bit of improvement there, maybe more lines going on. Now this, this is what I've been waiting to talk about. I have a very strong nostalgia for Batman. Not, you know, obviously this Batman, the Robertson-Pattinson Batman, Pattinson, is a brand new Batman. I did really enjoy the movie. I like the noir feel of it. I like the script. I like the storytelling. I did, at first I wasn't super into the costume in the preview pics we got before the film came out, but seeing it acted and used in context, I really, really grew to like it and enjoy it, maybe even love it. But Batman is one of those heroes for me growing up that felt attainable. He used his brains and he used his body to fight crime. That's why I have over here my Sideshow Premium Format Modern Age Batman in the blue, yellow, and gray suit. That is one of only 2 statues I kept out of my entire statue collection that I sold off last year, because I love Batman so much and I love the blue and yellow one. I digress. This action figure, in my opinion, is the best action figure I've ever seen in my life. Hands down. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not shilling. This is the best action figure I've seen in my entire life. That was the first reaction I had to it. When I was asked about it by multiple people, I thought about it, and I'm sticking to that. I've looked at my images multiple times. I've looked at my video again. I've looked at other people's videos. In my opinion, this is the best action figure that's ever been made. I know that's a strong statement. I love this. I love this. Every little detail, every little edge is beautiful. It's perfect. Everything is done with care. All the details there. I really have no nitpicks. I mean, sometimes I can look at the edges and I can go, that edge looks too thick, too dense, too rounded. Or I can look at the fabric and go, yeah, it doesn't look scaled right. Something's too thick, something's too thin. I have zero complaints about this action figure. Zero. Like, seriously. It's beautiful. I love the accessories that it comes with. I know in the movie he was a little bit of a minimalist Batman, so I'm not worried about it. Honestly, this Batman is beautiful. I love the cape. I love the cowl. I have no complaints about this. The posability is there. The head sculpt looked great. The rooted sculpt looks great. It looks like somebody took Pym particles from the Marvel Universe and threw them at Pattinson while he was doing a costume test. And I honestly don't think the pictures do it justice, not because it's not capturing all the fineness of this and all the detail and all the cool looks of this and all the edging and everything that was done right, just because I think once you see it in front of your own eyes, it's like, wow, that's literally a shrunken human being in a costume. It's not a toy. I have nothing bad to say about this. I cannot wait to get this figure. All right, on to the busts and statues. I'm going to start with the Peter Parker Iron Spider with mask off, 1:1 scale bust. So this face is disturbing. Disturbingly good. No, literally looks like Tom Holland's just going to turn to me and go, hey, what's up, man? This was my wife's favorite piece of pretty much the entire event. She loves Spider-Man, and she looked at this and she was just like, take a picture of me with that. That's a big compliment to you guys. My wife is a huge Spider-Man fan. She does love Tom Holland's Spider-Man as well. And she thought it was incredible. The only thing I'm going to say, though, about the Iron Spider portion of the bust is that, to me, up close, it doesn't look as chrome as I think it should look. And I noticed you guys put this wonderful texture over all of it to emulate the sort of nanobots that it's made of. I don't recall seeing any still images from the films or anything, though. Anything that showed that texture all over. I do remember in some parts it had it, but I feel like it was way more chrome or powder-coated looking than textured and painted with a chromatic metallic paint. So I feel like the Iron Spider portion of that could actually be, I think it could be a lot better. But I do think the sort of chromatic glossy nature of that suit is lacking here. So I would say that maybe smoothing out some of that and doing less texture or less pronounced texture that is a little bit shallower and using more of an actual chromatic paint or a stronger metallic finish would probably give this a little bit stronger of an actual sort of ripped right out of the movie presence. Doctor Strange. So this was another one that was really freaky. It looks like you guys went on set and murdered Benedict Cumberbatch and just brought him to the event. My wife is also a big fan of Benedict Cumberbatch himself, and she's kind of wanted to lean in and give the bust a little peck on the cheek. There's nothing wrong with this at all. This looks, again, it just looks like he killed Benedict Cumberbatch and brought him to the event. This is like Smithsonian level display good, or maybe even better than Smithsonian level display good. Loki. So, face, just as good as all the other faces. The cape is made out of looking like a wool or a felt wool style material. I just looking at that up close, that was just an observation I made. I don't have a critique about it, but I was just like, oh, that's interesting. It looks nice, though. I did notice the under pads under the pauldrons, or the gorget, whatever you want to call it, this gorget piece. Then you have the shoulder pauldrons. The pieces underneath, the sort of pieces graduated underneath, I feel like need a little weathering. They looked like they were just straight up cast in a gold acrylic or plastic or PVC, whatever you're using. And I noticed they had pretty much zero weathering. I know the lighting was also very dark there, so if I just didn't catch it, my apologies. But I didn't see any weathering on those. And as such, they're under other things, and you wouldn't get as much. But to me, somebody who weathers things all the time, they look like they needed something. A wash or maybe like a rub of something would have made it tie in a little bit better to the rest of the piece. But I don't think anyone else noticed that except for me. So, take that with a grain of salt, or as you will. Let the people who bought this bust be the real final judges of that. Capitan America. So this statue was absolutely incredible. I have nothing bad to say about this. In fact, when I zoomed in on his leathered fingerless glove hand, I actually thought it was a leather glove over the silicone hand, but none of that was true. It's actually all cast, and the leather and skin are painted. You can tell some of the knuckles look a little bit painted when you kind of focus on it, but that hand looks like legit leather. I was extremely impressed with this. One of the other collectors who was there was Michael Roman from the channel Everything Always. That was a surprise. I forgot that he was a collector, but it was nice to meet him. He was a scholar and a gentleman. I think I heard him say that he actually ordered this Captain America piece, so it'll be interesting to hear what he says. So go check out Everything Always if you're not already watching it like the other million subscribers he has. It's absolutely beautiful, and I think he was gushing over it. This half-scale Captain America, wow. I have actually never been in the physical presence of a half-scale statue. Many full-size pieces, many busts, many quarter scales, many third scales, but I've never actually stood in front of a half-scale piece. This was pretty incredible. I was surprised. I always wondered how half-scale felt in real life. When you're standing about 2 feet back or more, everything is legit. All the paint finishes and everything look real. When you get in about a foot or closer, me as an artist who paints things, I can tell there's a lot of painted cast materials in there, but it really doesn't take away from the presence of the piece. If you just back up to 2 to 3 feet, which is closer than most people are even going to be standing, it looks like a shrunk down version of Captain America out of Endgame, and he's about to give Thanos the beatdown. So this is beautiful for whoever can afford it. I think those busts were running in the $4,000 range. I can't imagine this is going to be that much cheaper, but it's incredible. The only thing I did notice, again, as the diorama and base guy, that piece of what I assume is rebar on the bottom of the base, way too big. In real life, rebar is only about 3/4 of an inch around. There are slightly different sizes, but that piece you have on the base is bigger than a full-size piece in real life as far as the diameter goes. So that just made me kind of go, huh? As somebody who actually works on construction sites all the time, I see rebar all day long. That rebar is bigger than the rebar in real life. That's the only thing. But I don't think anyone's going to care except someone like me. So, hey, Joaquin Phoenix 1/3 Joker statue. Now, the tailoring on this, very beautiful. The posing on this, I do feel like in person evoked a lot of emotion. I heard a lot of collectors saying they weren't impressed by the images and video of this, but I do have to say in person, I felt this piece, not like I was moved, but like I felt what it was doing. I felt the emotion of the moment here, where he's just completely mentally and emotionally absorbed into what he's doing. And I say he because I feel like I felt this moment, not it, but he. And my wife, Mrs. Euler's Workshop, that was the first thing she said to me. She's like, wow, I can really feel this piece. It looks just like Joaquin. This is really impressed. She was very impressed by this sculpt, as was I. In person, it's definitely Joaquin Phoenix. I do like the colors on the base too, those beautiful tiles. It looks really good. The 1/3 scale Superman. The one thing that I did notice immediately was that his front hand, where he's doing his fist, seems way too big, to be honest. I think I said it in my video too. It just seems way too big. I know there's sort of like a scientific test where if you take your hand and you spread it out and you put it on your face, and from the bottom of your palm to the top of your middle finger, if it's taller than your face, something's wrong with your bone structure. So I do feel like the fist was too big, and maybe it's the other way around, maybe his head and neck is actually scaled down a little. Either the head was too small or the fists were too big, or maybe both. The paint on the skin was definitely sort of like tonally the same, so I do believe this is a prototype, so that'll probably change in the future. I did appreciate the base though. There's a beautiful glowing light up effect on the base. It's not painted, it's actually lit up, and I thought that was really great. I like this piece. I like the Black Suit Superman, but I am most excited to see your 1/6 scale Black Suit Superman, which you said you might be able to have ready for this event. We didn't see it, but I'm looking forward to seeing that because that might be the first Superman action figure I ever buy. Yes, I've never bought a Superman action figure at all. Okay, the 1/4 scale Nightmare Batman. I know in my video when I filmed this live for the channel, I said 1/3 scale. The reason I said that is because in person, it's actually quite huge. It has a large amount of presence on the table. I know some people hate that word presence, but I'm using it because it's the only one I can think of. It was quite large. Obviously, stepping back, looking at it in comparison to the Black Suit Superman, it's definitely smaller. At the time, though, looking through the lens of the camera, it looked like a 1/3 piece. So forgive me, it is a 1/4 scale piece. This is absolutely beautiful. This is on par with those 1/6 scale figures in the fineness as far as materials and fabrics and things like that. Any of you who order this, I'm sure won't be disappointed with it. It looks really, 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 really gorgeous. If I was collecting stuff from this film or that scene, I would absolutely buy this. I'm not, though. I have my Batman over here for now that I really love until something comes along that I like better, that I'll sell that and buy the other one. This one isn't it, though, but I really appreciate this, and I'm sure everyone will be very, very happy with it. Last but not least, we have everybody's favorite dinosaur, the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. Well, you guys did a great job with this sculpt, a great job with the paint on him. This base actually lights up. It's really gorgeous. It did look really great all lit up, so if you guys plan on doing like many more of these, I don't know if you already did, I apologize, I didn't bother to check that online. A whole room of these and all these dinosaurs with connecting bases that all light up would look amazing from the original Jurassic Park film. May I recommend Parasaurolophus, the Triceratops, and the Dilophosaurus. Okay, as you all know, they had an after the show and the display of the items panel where they did a little bit of talking about the history of their company, where I learned that they're called Queen Studios because everybody on their main staff that founded the company loved the band Queen, which is extremely endearing to me and my wife. We're huge Queen fans. Of course, we love Freddie Mercury's music, and we're glad we share that in common with you guys. That was fun to learn. Thank you for sharing that. On this panel, they shared a lot of the upcoming statues they've been working on that haven't publicly revealed yet. Thank you for that opportunity to see that. They're going to be doing some things that are related to the Marvel Universe in multiple scales that you haven't seen yet from them. Many of the collectors there were very excited. One of the things that they revealed, they are doing a life-size 1-to-1 scale Hulkbuster statue. You can order one for the low price of $50,000 if you'd like one. And from what I remember, they said they've already sold 3. Act now, call today. It's only $50K. They talked a lot about their current licenses and licenses they're in negotiations with. John did say on that Saturday that they were going to visit Fox and talk about licensing, and they were going to ask about Predator. They do have the license for Terminator 2. I didn't get clarification on which scales they have that for, but I do think he said they have the license to work in 1/6 scale, if I'm not mistaken. I think they had, I'm looking at the page where he said these are all 1/6 scale licenses they have, which is they have SNK, King of Fighters, Overlord, Fighters 97, Amblin Entertainment, Back to the Future, Universal, Studio Canal, Al something anime, I'm sorry I can't read this one, Legendary, Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, The Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings, and Alita Battle Angel. From what I remember them saying, these are 1/6 scale licenses. They don't, it did sound like they don't have permission to just go carte blanche and do whatever they want. It does sound like some of these may be limited to only maybe certain characters. I don't know. That was the implication I got from hearing how John worded what he said, but we'll see how it evolves over time. And one of the big reveals they have is they have the license for Michael Jackson Collectibles in all scales, and it is a global license. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, in the comments below, but I believe you said all scales, and that is a global license, and you're going to be revealing a Thriller bust soon. Dune is a global license. That is basically some of the highlights that I thought were meaningful to share about the event, my thoughts on the collectibles. I want to say I met some wonderful people there. I met Michael Roman, who runs the Everything Always channel, who's also a wonderful musician. Go check out his stuff and go listen to his music. He was a pleasure to meet. You always wonder if the way you hear them talk on their channel is the way they are in real life. Absolutely, he was the way he is on his channel. Very genuine, polite guy. You can always hear the smile on his face when he runs his channel. He was the same way in real life. Thanks, Michael. It was a pleasure to meet you. I also met, of course, Justin's Collection, who everybody knows from the figure world. Justin was extremely cordial and polite. He told me as soon as I introduced myself to him that he had the opportunity to pose all of the figures in the cases for InArt. He's the one who actually set up everything for them and with them. He asked me what I thought of the posing, and I thought he did a great job, to be honest with you. It was nice to meet you, Justin. Thank you for being so polite, kind, and helpful, and explaining what was going on with the figures. I also got to meet Mr. X of the Extreme channel, who is very kind and polite in real life, very cordial, and that's kind of what I expected. Nice to meet you, Mr. X. I also got to meet Harry, who is a Southern Nevada native from the area the event was held in. He made a beautiful presentation video of the event. He had this camera equipment that everyone was jealous of, and he does incredible toy photography on Instagram. Go check out Harry. I also met the father and son duo who run Fine Tip Creative Studio. Those are the first people I met at the event. They were very kind and cordial, a lot of fun to talk to. They look like they had a great time, and they have a great time on their channel, so go check those guys out. I also met Mr. Denobi 2 himself. He was very polite and cordial with us. I know he's a Las Vegas, Nevada native, and me and my wife asked him for suggestions of places to go after the event. He suggested this really, really cool place called Area 15, which is sort of like it's like a Fun Quest arcade, but for adults. Psychedelic funhouse maze and a zip line, and actual stand-up coin-operated arcade games, puzzle rooms, and VR simulators. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for that suggestion, Denobi. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you to John and Jason of Queen Studios and InArt. You guys, I could tell you guys were a little bit nervous at the beginning of the event. You weren't sure how people were going to feel about meeting in a group and seeing all these collectibles, but I could tell you guys relaxed over time. Overall, the event went really, really well, and I'm sure you guys saw that. We enjoyed everything you put out. I really appreciate it. And I do think that venue was actually really, really nice to have that venue in. The third floor we know is designed for like a display scene like that, so it was kind of plain. But that was a very cool building to see the whole art house theater while I was there. The second floor with the bar and the terrace, jazz band playing, and on the first floor, the big courtyard and area where, by the way, I met Todd himself, who owns and runs Spec Fiction. Todd walked up to me and introduced himself. I had no idea who he was. I ordered my XM Beta Ray Bill statue from him. If you'd like to order something that may be hard to find here in the States, go check out Spec Fiction. That's where I'm going to get my InArt The Batman from. I've never heard a bad thing about Todd. All I hear is compliments, so go check out Todd at Spec Fiction. Hey everyone, I recorded all those thoughts on Tuesday after the InArt event, and I've been thinking about a couple of things that I said in that video and a couple of things that people have said afterwards, and I just wanted to throw this out there. I wanted to say mostly to the collectors who are concerned because InArt is a new company, and we're still waiting to get that first batch of product out, and everyone's wondering how things are going to turn out. The impression that I got, and I mean this positively, the impression that I got in the live panel, listening to John and Jason and watching their slideshow about the history of their company and all the artists they have working there, the impression that I got is that this was a bunch of custom artists who came together to put their business, to put a new business together. It reminded me a lot of Image Comics from the 90s when Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee were like, why don't we stop working for other people where they're going to pay us, you know, these fixed amounts to do work so they can make a lot of money, when we can just form our own company and we can make a living doing what we love the way we want. To be honest, that's the impression I got listening to the four main artists they have on their team, including Viper, and they've got Jason, the CEO, and now they've hired John to be their licensing guy and their sort of communicator with people and companies outside of Asia. And I know they outsource some of their hiring to other artists to help them with their projects, which they showcased some of those wonderful artists on that panel from around the country. I think there was somebody from Russia, somebody from Australia, another artist from America. And the impression I got of that really reminded me of how Industrial Light and Magic came together when that company was getting formed by George Lucas in the 70s. He just brought a bunch of talented people together and said, hey, let's make something great. You know, they had in that case, they had George Lucas as their leader. In this case, it sounds like we have Jason as the leader of this team. And it gave me a lot of ILM and Image Comics vibes. And I mean this as a compliment. It sounds to me like it's a lot of individual artists coming together and saying, hey, let's try to do this as a group together to create a wonderful company where we make things we love and do it as good as we possibly can. And I think some collectors are seeing that and the result of the process of that and interpreting it as shady. It's not. It's a group of artists trying to navigate the international space of running a business and seeking out licensing to progress towards doing things as transparently and hopefully legally as possible. And that's a process when you're new. And when you're going from artist to business, running a business, that's an enormous transition. And I myself went from being an employee, doing the secular trade that I do now as my regular form of work. I went from being an employee for 4 years to starting my own company. And it took me like 3 years to really say that I feel like I'm a confident and a good business owner. The first 2 years, I was a mess. I lost clients because I did things unprofessionally, not because I wasn't trying to, just because I didn't know how things should be handled, and I was learning. And I wouldn't say I burned any bridges, but I definitely left some bad taste in some people's mouths along the way because I was learning, and I didn't know there were things I needed to learn that I didn't know, and you just don't know until you go through it. And I feel like I'm sensing a little bit of that with InArt and the process that Queen Studios is going through, especially with the 6-scale figure line. And in saying all that, it's not a criticism, it's a compliment. For now, they have my support for their figure line, for their statues, and they have my support for their goals, and I hope that they reach them. And so I just wanted to put that out there. That's really the honest impression that I got, and those are the best analogies that I could come up with. So I hope that helps allay some of your guys' concerns. I mean, you know, time will tell how everything goes, but they have my support, and I hope everything goes well for them. So have fun, guys. Kawaii! They're Dilophosaurus.